specialist? Is it a speech and language pathologist? Like, is there someone in your district that can do it, or does this have to be a child's doctor? So that was one of the questions that we had. And then Sarah and I, being at the kind of K3 early childhood level, we don't see a lot of labels of dyslexia, mostly because everyone is still an emergent reader. And in that span of, well, you can develop reading skills in anywhere up to 3 years after starting school, we don't really see a label get put on a lot of kids that way, because everyone is still emergent, or they're just labeled as struggling. So yeah, we've never actually seen a dyslexia label on a student. So.
And Alyssa, you were saying the same kind of thing when I popped in.
Yeah, I said the same thing, that it's so common in kindergarten that they're flipping B's and D's. They do it all the time. They're reading saw when it says was. It's so common. I wouldn't even probably know even if I did know that I had one of those students in my class, I don't even know if I'd be able to identify them because everyone's doing it. So yeah, it's pretty common. Everyone's a struggling reader at the beginning.
Very cool. And let's go to the third group. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, that just made me think about if students are struggling in emergent readers at the early years, which of course is true, like what age should they be referred or diagnosed? That's something I'm wondering. In our group, we talked, I don't have any students that I know of that have dyslexia, but the other two, Beth and Danielle, both know at least one student. Danielle showed us a document of a student work that was just from this week of his story, and he leaves out a lot of sounds from words, and that was interesting to see. He talked about how dysgraphia and dyscalculia can also go hand in hand with it. And again, it's something I haven't seen, but I've been curious about. Danielle mentioned she didn't learn about this in undergrad, and I didn't either. And now I'm wondering if I had a student, I just didn't know that their specific learning disorder was dyslexia. Should I?
Well, and you guys didn't go through a.
I don't think I have, because I think I would. No.
Well, that's probably why. But it does make you wonder. So, Danielle and Beth, what do you guys want to talk about your experiences? Either one?
I just started with my students, so I don't really see too much yet. He, is extremely low, like first grade reading level in 6th grade. So it's been difficult just to kind of even get him to read out loud to me. But I definitely noticed with his writing, he has words that he tends to stick with, like I went, or I not saw, but he sticks with some very basic words, and then when he tries to go outside of the box, he forgets a lot of sounds. And he doesn't connect his sentences. He goes down to the next line, I guess. So I don't know, it's still very new to me, and I'm still trying to understand everything that he does. So,
and well, it's probably just like every kid, but just like kids, there are patterns with them, but there are not, they're different, so they won't go in the same direction. So we've got to study them as much as anybody else. Beth, do you want to talk to that? You've probably had quite a bit of experience.
Yeah, I have, because I'm an Art and Gillingham tutor, I have, most of my students are dyslexic, and many of them are older because there are maybe signs when they're younger, but it's so common to say, well, they'll, that can be just developmental, they can outgrow it. And lots of parents who end up frustrated because you're told, well, wait till 3rd grade, because all these things can be normal until 3rd grade, and it's great if they are, but if they're not, after 3rd grade, we stop teaching them how to read, and so suddenly they're way behind. and very frustrated. You know, I have just kids who cry, who spend years thinking that they're stupid, and their brain is, it's just a matter of how their brain is wired. They're perfectly capable of learning it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I, you know, and I've talked to so many parents who, you know, are just crushed by what their child has had to go through, you know, without, because, well, any child really who struggles by third grade really knows they're struggling, I think. And that it's just painful, you know. I wasn't surprised actually, Danielle, when you talked about your student you know, using kind of risk-free words, like using the same words that he knows how to spell. That's a really common thing in a struggling student. You know, let's stick to the ones I know I'm not going to mess up with, because I don't want to show everybody that I'm failing, because and it's also called learned failure, that you just kind of assume that if you do step out of that box, as you said, that you're going to fail. Like you'll just show weakness, and that's not always a good thing with everyone, is it? It's rough being a kid. So, and there are signs, certainly early on, if you're attuned to them, but you know, delayed language, I believe, is one, you know, where they start talking a little late. But again, just because a kid starts talking late doesn't mean they're dyslexic. There's a lot of ways you can start language late. So it's best to, you know, if you've got a parent who's kind of, well, you know, watching every little thing, they'll probably get caught. But if they're like me, and I'm like, oh, they'll just kind of grow, all right, they'd probably get to third grade, and maybe we'd find out that there was a problem. And then Beth, was it you that said, you know, it's almost too late? I mean, at that point, there's learned failure. They've already been struggling for years. They're not going to get the support in class that they need. They'll be removed. And very often dyslexic students are really smart. So, you know, taking them out of the regular classroom and putting them into these kind of classes that may or may not really serve their purposes, it's not always a good idea. And that's why you have been doing what you've been doing, right, Beth? Because, you know, some parents with a little means can pay and get services for their student, right? I will say, before we continue this discussion, there's a huge, I would say, fight going on at the state level right now. And it's nasty, really nasty. I'm friends with people on both sides, and there's extremists, I would say, on both sides, not to use kind of like, you know, Middle Eastern language here. That's not quite the level we're talking about, but you know, there's people who kind of, they're passionate and they're fighting for kids. And I don't, you know, it's hard not to be passionate, but they may not always hear the other side. And what's going, and there's the dyslexic teachers, researchers, parents who, you know, say, hey, wait a minute, dyslexia is really not being served. Look at these tragedies that are happening all over our state. What can we do? And the advocacy, at least at the state level, is pretty extreme. They want to institute kind of dyslexia stuff throughout every classroom. And that's a little extreme, right? You know, I mean, dyslexic kids need it, but it's not always what every kid needs. And they're talking about scripted lessons and all these kind of things, even in class, you know, in every classroom. So and then the other side saying, hey, you know, we've got, this isn't quite fair. You know, there's just like, I can't remember the numbers. I actually heard them over the weekend. I was out of town at the Wisconsin State Reading Association leadership meeting, and they said them, but I forget what they were. What is it? 2%, 10%? I don't know. Of kids have dyslexia, but I can't remember. But then, you know, do we change entire classrooms for that amount of students and remove basically Maryland Avenue Montessori? Sorry, they always call when I teach. Always, it's set. I mean, there's like an automated thing. My kids' school always calls during. So okay, there's our call. They call twice because I have 2 kids. So be aware. So I'll try to sit on this thing maybe. Right now there's a lot of money being put into this fight at the state level. There was a dyslexia panel kind of created in a report, and it was basically manned by one side of this, and it wasn't reading teachers. It was mostly ed psychs. They did bring, after some battle, they did bring some reading teachers on, but they weren't given voting privileges, so kind of silly, they don't really have a say, and legislation is going to come out of this. And so if you know anything about legislation, remember the fort. Once you get it in, it's not coming out, right? So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I will say that the dyslexia side is really going to be represented. If you listen, gosh, where's my calendar? On Friday night, NPR is going to have, oh shoot, I left my whole calendar downstairs. It's going to have a report or a show on dyslexia from the ed psych side. And they know a lot about dyslexia. So that might be something you might want to tune into. The only problem is it's very one-sided. So I'll try to balance that out for you as well. Maryland Avenue Montessori. That's second. So, well, I don't want you to think that there's only one way to do this kind of thing. If I had my druthers, I don't want to be political about this. I would say that every reading teacher should know what they know. I love that you're trained in Orton Gillingham. I wish I were, and there are, I should know, I should have every tool at my disposal, but I also believe that how do you put it? My expertise covers all of this, then I should also be allowed to use my judgment about what a student needs. So, and the scripted stuff always irks me because, I've been doing this for quite a few years, and come on, don't give me a scripted lesson here. I study, I kind of think we should be using every bit of research and information that we can to teach kids well. And that's a lot of what this class is going to be about. So we're going to try to get as much information and as many tools for our tool belt, or however you want to put it, to meet the needs of the great variety of individual students out there. And while there are patterns that we're going to discuss, every kid is so unique. And that's the beauty of this job, right? I love, there's no phoning it in. You get to know a student in ways that even their parents don't know them. Anyway, okay, I'm obviously on a soapbox. I apologize. Like I said, I've been dealing with this all weekend, and people are yelling and fighting, and good gracious, this is not the end of hearing about this. I will continue to try to keep you in the loop. So if I see any, I'll put the report up again, remembering that it's one-sided, but I didn't want to just give it to you and have you say, look, here's truth. It's some truth, but it's one-sided. So I'll give you that now so that you can kind of thumb through it, and we'll continue on as well. some of my special ed friends have said that that stuff isn't always as good as some of the stuff we do. So, in more reading teacher areas. So, I don't know. Like I said, I kind of err on the side of knowing it all. So, and right now I'm working very closely with a friend of mine that does come out of ed psych. And we're creating a class together that hopefully, it's really for just kind of basic classroom kind of stuff, but it is to combine both sides because I think it's important to do so. So hopefully I'll be bringing that in as we go. So we're about halfway through. So let's talk about some of those questions. So I have a question because I can't remember what this state does in terms of dyslexia. I remember when I was in Florida, the school system could not diagnose for dyslexia. It was only a doctor. Is that the case here?
That's the idea that I got from my principal when I asked her why I had not learned anything of it in undergrad. She said because it's technically a medical diagnosis. So she kind of said that's why we wouldn't have talked about it at all. So,
although it does impact us,
right. That was what I said. I was like, well, it affects us so much. So why wouldn't we talk about it? So I don't know.
Yeah. And they certainly don't do brain scans. I mean, the stuff, the ways that you can diagnose it are, well, they're not exacting. Let's just put it that way. It's not like you do look at a brain scan and say, oh, this one, look at this as opposed to that. It's not that simple. So diagnosing is a little bit of a trick as well. So I don't know. I wouldn't want to have to do it myself. So how is dyslexia treated out there? So a lot of you haven't heard much about it at all. I'm just looking around. Yeah, lots of no's. Okay. So it's not really discussed in your settings. If this legislation goes through, it will be. You're all gonna hear about it. Okay. Well, and Ash is here too. Good. Welcome. All right. So now we've got a whole 10 students. That's great. We're missing 2, I think. All right. So we'll continue talking about dyslexia. It is for a long time, it was used kind of interchangeably with learning disabilities, but it is kind of a piece of that pie. And learning disabilities are huge. And dyslexia is certainly more than just reversals. And in fact, some dyslexics, I believe, don't have the simple reversal piece. Is that correct, Beth, would you say? Okay. So just reversing your B's and D's isn't gonna point you out to a dyslexic, that can be that's a misnomer or a myth, perhaps. Well, maybe not myth. I mean, that it doesn't define it. There, that works. All right. So, what we're gonna do now as we go forward is kind of go back to running records, and we're going to try one because I believe last time we got so far as we kind of got so far as discussing what running records were, and we never got to actually do one. Am I correct? That's what I wrote down, but I never know. All right. I interpret my strange scrawls sometimes differently. So what let's do. I know that's last week. All right. So we're going to go on to running records for a bit here. And we're going to practice it. So there's a couple of things I need to bring up. Is this going to work? Let's see. Can you hear that? Wow, good, good, good. I love the cheesy music. I don't know why. After all these years, I hear that and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the great stuff. All right, where is, oh, wait, that's not right. Oh, hold up. Did I copy the wrong ones? Yeah, it's not the Chris video. It's the Aiden one. I have to go in here. Let's bump this out. Where's new window? Come on. My apologies, guys. There we go. So what I'd like to do, here we go. We are going to watch Aiden do a series of running records. And he's a first grader from, I think, 1992 or something like that. So he's in college, I guess, right now. Or no, beyond. Oh yeah, beyond. All right. And he's going to start with this one. I can read. 1983. And so let me quickly here. Adjust this a little bit. No. And this will be the video. And it's important that we always, so weird, that we always see the student and see where the student's eyes are going. We're not going to always see that in this video, but when you are, when you're giving those assessments, one of the reasons why you can't do it with a small group or anything is because you really need to look and see where the student is looking. Ideally, the student will point, but he doesn't point, so it leaves some questions. But here is the text. I will show you here. I'm going to have to move this up and down a little bit. And I may forget. I don't know. I get caught up and I kind of forget. So I will, oops. So here's the text. I can read to mom. I can read, and by the way, he is from New Zealand, so they're in New Zealand because this comes out of the original Mari Clay stuff. So there's an accent. So mom is correct for him. I can read to dad. I can read to Nana. I can read to my sister. I can read to my teacher. I can read to my friend. I can read to myself. So that is the expected text. No, I can't get any more of it. And he's going to read it. So take out a piece of paper and a pencil. It's impossible to do a running record any other way. And I'm going to use a pen so you can see, because mine is going to be the thing we talk about, but I recommend pencils. Okay. Are you ready? All right, here we go.
Aiden, I have a book I'd like for you to read. It's called I Can Read.
I can read to my mom. I can read to dad. I can read to Nana. I can read to my sister. I can read to myself.
Beautiful reading. Thank you, Aiden. We have another one I'd like you to read.
All right, I didn't move it. Sorry. Let's do this one again. All right. Ready? Set.
Aiden, I have a book I'd like for you to read. It's called I Can Read.
I can read to my mom. I can read to dad. I can read to Nana. I can read to my sister. I can read to myself.
Beautiful reading. Thank you, Aiden. We have another one I'd like for you to read.
Oops.
It's called Time for Dinner.
All right, no time for dinner. Sorry, I didn't get this fast enough. Partly because I can't get.
I think if you press the little full screen button right above the plus sign on the PDF itself.
Like this.
Yeah, it makes it fill the screen.
Nice.
And then the plus sign will zoom it in however far you want it to.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Is this big enough? Perfect. Can you guys read that? Does that look good? All right, we'll do this one last time. Now that you can see it all. Oh. No, we're not there yet.
I can read.
I can read to my mom.
Unknown caller.
To dad. I can read to Nana. I can read to my sister. I can read to myself.
Beautiful reading.
All right. So, let me close this door. So, at this point, what I'd like you guys to do, I'd like to put you in small groups so that you can go through and try to figure out how it should be written. I've got, but are there any questions before I do that? Okay. All right, so let's go back into those breakout rooms. And then I'll bring you back in just a few minutes, because after you guys just figure out how to write it, you'll have questions. Oh, Ash. Hi, I'm going to put you in a room.
what they're doing. A breakout room for what? I don't know what I'm breaking out of. And she's not talking.
Hello? Erin? Is that you? Everybody's in groups right now.
Okay. Can you even hear me?
I can.
Like,
It kind of sounds.
oh, you can hear me?
It sounds a little bit like you're underwater. A little bit. There's like a wah 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 to it, but I can hear you very clearly.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. And what I'm going to ask you to do right now is if you go up to the top right-hand corner of your screen, it says speaker view. I want you to click on that so it's no longer a Brady Bunch. It's just one person that you see. And then you probably see me because I'm talking. Then I'm going to switch my screen so that you can see my piece of paper. Well, and here is kind of the most common thing we've come up with in this class about how to represent what was going on. Does this look at all like what you guys have? See some nods. It's close. I know that it can be a little tricky, and we're going to talk about that because I think there's some alternate kind of conceptions about how to do this. So again, it doesn't have to be exactly right all the time, but we'll talk it through. And what are your questions? I know you've got them. Uh-oh, you're all frozen.